The glow of the computer screen cut through the darkness of the room, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The soft hum of the computer was the only sound in the silence of the night. Outside, the rain tapped rhythmically against the window, a distant reminder of the world outside. Inside, however, the atmosphere was thick with tension, a sense of unease hanging in the air. The narrator, a young adult in their mid-20s, sits alone in their room, wrapped in the quiet comfort of their online world. They are an ordinary person with an ordinary life, yet something about the digital realm feels different now. Something feels off. In the beginning, they share stories of the vibrant online community they are a part of. The comforting chatter of Discord servers, late-night games, and memes exchanged with friends. It's a familiar environment, one that feels safe. They never question the simplicity of these interactions. But there's always a nagging feeling at the back of their mind, a subtle voice that warns them not to trust everything they see or hear online. As they describe their experience, the light from the screen reflects off their face, but their expression is tense. They confess that it was only after several unsettling encounters that they began to question the safety of the digital world. What started as a harmless conversation, a friendly chat in a Discord group, soon turned into something darker. Slowly, but surely, they began to realize that there were dangers lurking in the shadows, hiding behind the screens of seemingly innocent people. There's a growing tension in the air, as the narrator recalls moments of discomfort, strange direct messages, odd comments in the chat, and that gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. The tension gradually builds, amplified by the growing unease in their voice as they narrate. The mood shifts subtly, from casual to unsettling, as the narrator emphasizes how often we take for granted the anonymity of the internet, how we trust that the people we interact with are who they say they are. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when someone begins to watch you, study you, follow you, and you don't even realize it until it's too late? The pacing here is deliberate, slow. It's as though the narrator is carefully piecing together the details of something they've only recently discovered. The audience is drawn in by the honesty of the storyteller, the raw vulnerability in their voice. There's no dramatic music, no sudden jumps, just the quiet hum of a computer and the creeping realization that something sinister is unfolding. Then, a sudden interruption. The narrator's phone buzzes, a notification that breaks the eerie calm. It's a new message. The tone shifts. This isn't just a story anymore. Something is about to happen. Something dangerous. The sudden shift from the calm, reflective tone to the impending fear sets the stage for the next section, leaving the audience hanging on the edge of their seats, wondering what's next. Emily was just a regular gamer, someone who spent her nights immersed in online worlds, chasing after high scores and connecting with other players. Her favorite pastime was to jump into Discord servers where she'd chat with her friends about strategies, game updates, and occasionally life outside the game. Everything seemed normal at first, but that feeling, that unsettling sensation that started creeping in, would soon change everything. The atmosphere was calm at first, a reflection of the digital world she loved to inhabit. The sound of her mouse clicks, the hum of her headphones, and the vibrant light of her gaming setup illuminated her otherwise dark room. Her gaming chair, where she spent most of her time, felt like a comforting embrace until something shifted. It started with one message from a new user. Their username was unfamiliar, and the content of the message was harmless enough. But something about it stuck with Emily. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't demanding, but it felt too personal. At first, she brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just another enthusiastic player trying to engage. They had briefly interacted in a random gaming channel, so she didn't think much of it. But then the messages began to pile up, little things at odd hours of the day. Questions about her interests, her preferences, and even small details about her personal life that she hadn't shared. At first, the answers were innocent, almost laughable. "How did you know I liked that band?" she would ask, not realizing how much closer this person was getting to her every single day. Then, the odd occurrences began. While she was chatting with her friends in a voice channel, the unfamiliar user would suddenly appear, always lurking in the background of her conversations. She would glance at her screen, and there they were, silently observing, never interacting, just watching. No direct messages, no conversation, just a quiet presence that seemed to always be there, listening, waiting. The eerie feeling crawled up her spine as she realized it wasn't just random. It was intentional. One evening, as Emily was talking about a recent trip she had taken to a nearby town, she glanced at her phone, only to see a new message pop up from this very same user. "How was the view from the bridge? You always post such beautiful pictures of it." Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't posted any pictures recently. Her social media had been quiet. The only place she had mentioned this specific detail was in the Discord chat that this user had only just started joining. Her stomach twisted. How did they know? The tension started building rapidly. The oddities weren't stopping. Emily tried to ignore it at first. She blocked the user. She thought she could escape. But the next day, the same user appeared again under a new name in a new server. It was as though they had anticipated her move, always staying one step ahead. The unease turned into a knot in her stomach as she realized the user wasn't just trying to chat. They were tracking her movements across the server, following her from one channel to the next, never leaving. Every time Emily logged in, she felt watched. It wasn't a paranoia. It wasn't an overactive imagination. She could feel it, the weight of an unseen gaze on her every move. It was in the way her mouse hovered over buttons, the way her fingers hesitated before typing, like someone was waiting for her to make a move. Every ping, every message, was like a tiny spark in the back of her mind, igniting a fire of dread that was impossible to extinguish. Her friends began to notice her growing discomfort. "You look like you're a million miles away," one of them had said during a game. She hadn't realized how much the constant surveillance was affecting her until then. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling. The stranger was still out there, somewhere in the vast digital world, watching. One night, she decided to confront them. She messaged the user directly. "Who are you? Why are you following me?" It was a desperate attempt to break the silence, to shatter the fear that had been building. But the response she received was chilling. "I'm always here, Emily. Always watching." Her heart raced. She tried to report the account, but something stopped her. What if this person had more access than just a random username? What if they had found a way into her life, a door she couldn't see? The fear wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. And with that message, it all clicked into place. This wasn't random. This wasn't just some stranger in a server. This was someone who had learned about her, tracked her down, and was now manipulating her every move. The emotional roller coaster was relentless. First, there was the initial shock, the disbelief. How could someone know so much about her? How could they have this kind of power over her online life? Then came the fear, deep, bone-chilling fear. The kind that made her check every corner of her digital presence, wondering if there was something else she had missed. And finally, there was the realization that nothing she did would make this stop. Blocking, reporting, none of it worked. The stalker was always one step ahead, hidden in the vast expanse of the internet, silent and ever-present. As Emily finally reached out to Discord support, hoping for some kind of resolution, she realized how powerless she had become. The anonymity of the digital world, once a comfort, had now turned against her. Her every move was being watched by someone with far too much knowledge, and there was no escape. The emotional impact on her was palpable. Fear had turned to dread, and dread had turned to helplessness. Emily's entire sense of safety in the digital world had been shattered. She no longer felt safe logging into her servers, let alone interacting in the spaces that once felt like home. And then, just as she thought she might be able to break free, the notification started again. This time, the message was simple, but no less terrifying. "I'll be waiting." With that final, chilling message, the story leaves the audience hanging, wondering, who was this person, and how long would Emily be trapped in their watchful gaze? It's a cliffhanger that hints at the darker story yet to come, setting the stage for the next tale. Marcus was never one to stand out in a crowd. He was quiet, a bit of a loner in high school, but he found solace in online gaming. The virtual world was his escape from the mundane realities of life, a place where he could be someone else, someone confident, someone who mattered. He didn't mind the long hours spent in front of his screen, communicating with strangers who shared his interests. The anonymity of the internet had always been a comfort, but that comfort would soon be shattered. It started innocently enough. Marcus had recently started watching a popular streamer who played the same game he loved. The streamer was a big deal, with thousands of followers, always engaged in lively interactions with fans. Marcus admired their skill and charisma, and the occasional message of support he sent out would sometimes get a brief acknowledgement. It was a nice feeling having his messages noticed, even in the massive crowd of viewers. Then one night, as Marcus was watching a live stream, something strange happened. During one of the quieter moments in the stream, a voice broke through his headphones. It was the streamer's voice, but it was directed straight at him. "Marcus, how's the grind going tonight?" The words were casual, but the intensity in the streamer's voice made Marcus freeze. He had never spoken to the streamer directly. They didn't know who he was. It was impossible, but the voice was unmistakable. He glanced around the room, wondering if someone else was messing with him, but it was only him. His heart raced. He couldn't focus on the game anymore. Was it a coincidence? Did the streamer somehow know his name? The voice lingered in his head long after the stream ended. The next day, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling. He checked his DMs, his notifications, nothing. The feeling of being watched, however, was still there, like an itch he couldn't scratch. That's when the messages started. They weren't from the streamer, but they were eerily similar, words of encouragement, followed by personal questions about his life. Felt like a game at first, but as time went on, the tone of the messages changed. It wasn't just about gaming anymore. They were asking about his classes, his friends, his plans. Details that Marcus had only shared in his public profiles, but they were now being used in ways he couldn't explain. The worst part was that the messages felt too intimate, too personal. "How's your mom doing? She must be proud of you," one message said. "I know you were struggling with that test last week. It must have been tough." Marcus's hands began to shake as he read the words. How did they know? Then, one evening, the voice returned. This time, it wasn't through the live stream. It was through a private voice chat message, sent directly to Marcus's Discord. He answered the call hesitantly, his heart racing. The familiar voice on the other end, warm and inviting, felt as though it had always been there. "Marcus, I see you've been working hard lately. How are you feeling?" The voice was comforting, yet there was an underlying layer of something darker, something unsettling. The words lingered in his mind, too close, too familiar, like the voice knew him in ways he never thought possible. The voice began appearing at odd times. When he was gaming late at night, when he was studying for his exams, even when he was lying in bed trying to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the voice echoed in his mind, playing back snippets of the things he had said, the things he had done. It was like the line between his online and real life was fading, blending into one endless, all-consuming nightmare. Fear crept into Marcus's heart. He couldn't stop thinking about the voice. It was like an echo in his brain, constantly replaying over and over, like a song that wouldn't leave. He started losing track of his own thoughts, wondering whether he was still in control of his life or if the voice was slowly taking over. Was it real, or was he just imagining it? The uncertainty gnawed at him, eating away at his peace of mind. In one final attempt to understand what was happening, Marcus confronted the voice. "Who are you? Why do you keep doing this?" He typed, his fingers trembling as he hit send. There was a long pause, longer than usual. The silence stretched on, a tension that seemed to fill the entire room. Finally, a message appeared. It was short, chilling. "You know who I am, Marcus. I'm always here, inside your head. Always." The message sent a jolt of panic through Marcus's chest. It wasn't just a voice. It was something deeper, something more dangerous. His mind raced. Was this person following him, tracking his every move? How did they know so much about him? Felt like he had lost control of everything. His thoughts, his identity, even his own reality. In the weeks that followed, Marcus tried to shut out the voice. He blocked accounts, he deleted messages, but it was all in vain. The voice remained, always in the background, waiting for him to listen, waiting for him to break. The more he tried to escape it, the stronger it seemed to grow. It was no longer just a voice. It had become an omnipresent force in his life, one that he couldn't outrun. The last straw came when Marcus received a final message. It wasn't just a random text or a voice call. It was a detailed account of his daily life, from the clothes he wore to the meals he ate. It was like someone was watching him in real time. And then the message ended with a single sentence. "I'm closer than you think." It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was real. The voice had become something more. It was a constant presence in Marcus's life, following him everywhere he went. And now it had made its move. The terror was unrelenting. As Marcus's sense of safety shattered, the voice grew louder, more demanding. He knew now that he could never escape it. The final realization, that he was being haunted by something that didn't exist in the physical world, sent shivers down his spine. Rachel was an aspiring artist, passionate about digital illustration. She had built a small, but dedicated following on social media, where she shared her latest work, received feedback, and connected with other artists who shared her love for creativity. For Rachel, the internet was a place of self-expression, a space where she could be herself and share her art with the world. But that comfort would soon slip away as something deeply unsettling began to unravel. It started with the simple act of posting her latest piece, a portrait of a fantasy creature, vibrant in color and full of intricate details. The feedback came quickly. Some praised her technique, others admired her imagination. But one comment stood out. It was from an account that didn't have any posts of its own, just a profile picture that was a vague, blurry version of Rachel's own artwork. The username was familiar, too familiar. It was close to her own, with just one letter altered. At first, Rachel thought it was a coincidence, a simple mistake. But the message was chilling. "Your work inspires me. I'm following your style closely." Rachel didn't give it much thought at first. It was possible someone admired her work, right? Maybe they were trying to emulate her style. But there was something about that account that unsettled her. The profile picture was just enough of a resemblance to her own art, but something was off. The colors were slightly different, the lines sharper, and the overall effect wrong. It was as if someone had taken her creation and twisted it just enough to make it feel foreign. But Rachel, in her naivety, pushed the unease aside. Artists often inspired one another, after all. Over the next few days, the messages from this account became more frequent. Each one seemed to blur the lines between admiration and obsession. "I love the way you captured the light in your latest piece. I've been working on something similar." Again, Rachel felt a cold shiver down her spine. This wasn't just a fan. This wasn't someone simply appreciating her work. This felt too calculated, too intimate. The messages became more personal, referencing things that Rachel had never shared online. Her favorite colors, the music she listened to while creating, even small anecdotes about her personal life that only close friends knew. How could they know these things? Then, one day, Rachel noticed something even more disturbing. As she browsed through her own social media feed, she saw a post that looked eerily familiar. It was a digital painting of a mythical creature, done in the same style as her own, but with an unsettling twist. The creature's eyes were hollow, and the colors in the background were unnaturally dark, almost menacing. The artist's username was the same one that had been sending her those odd messages. It wasn't a mere imitation anymore. It was a direct copy of her work, but altered in a way that made it feel wrong. Rachel's stomach dropped. At first, she thought it was a fluke, a coincidence. But as she dug deeper into the account, the evidence became undeniable. The artwork wasn't just influenced by her style, it was stolen. The details were too close, too identical. It was as if the person had been watching her, studying her every move, and then replicating her work. The worst part was that this wasn't just one piece. It was several pieces she had posted over the past few months. Each one subtly altered, twisted into something darker, more sinister. It felt like her art was being corrupted by an unseen hand. Rachel tried to confront the person behind the account. She sent a message, politely but firmly asking them to take down the artwork, to stop copying her work. But the response she received was something she would never forget. "Don't worry, Rachel. I'm not stealing your work. I'm just helping it grow. You'll see. You'll thank me one day." The calm, cryptic tone of the reply sent chills down her spine. It wasn't just a fan anymore. It was someone who had crossed the line. Someone who had taken her identity and twisted it into something foreign. The terror Rachel felt was palpable. What had started as simple admiration had quickly escalated into something much darker. It felt like she was being erased, her identity replaced by someone else's version of herself. She had to stop it before it was too late. Rachel tried everything she could think of. She reported the account to the platform. She blocked the user. She even took down all of her public posts, thinking that maybe, just maybe, the person would stop. But it didn't stop. The fake account persisted, and the messages kept coming. "You can't hide from me, Rachel. I know everything about you now." The intensity of the situation grew. Rachel felt her control slipping. She started noticing strange things happening around her. Little moments that should have felt normal suddenly felt out of place. A new follower on her social media would pop up at the same time every day. Her posts were being liked by accounts she didn't recognize, but who were all eerily familiar with her work. It wasn't just digital anymore, it was everywhere. The line between her online persona and her real life had blurred to the point where she wasn't sure who was real anymore. One night, after another sleepless evening, Rachel received a new message. This time, it wasn't from the fake account. It was from one of her friends, someone she had trusted. "Rachel, I need to talk to you. Something's wrong. Your work. It's showing up in places it shouldn't be." Rachel's heart dropped. It wasn't just online anymore. The stalker had begun to infiltrate every aspect of her life. The artwork was being shared without her consent, in public forums, in strange subreddits, and worst of all, in an underground artist group she had never even heard of before. Her identity, her art, was being manipulated and distributed in ways she couldn't control. She was being erased piece by piece. Her art, once a source of pride, was now being used as a tool in a twisted game she never wanted to play. The final blow came when Rachel logged into her email one morning to find a chilling message from the fake account. "You should have known, Rachel. You gave me everything I needed. Now I am you." The line between her and the doppelganger had completely disappeared. There was no more hiding, no more control. And as Rachel stared at the screen, helpless, she realized the terrifying truth. She had been replaced. Her own identity had been consumed by someone who wasn't even real. As she closed her laptop, the weight of the situation crushed her. The person behind the stolen art had won. There was nothing left to do but watch as her own creation slipped further away from her. The story leaves the audience with a chilling cliffhanger. How far would this doppelganger go? How much of Rachel's life would they take next? Jason had always been a quiet teenager, the kind of person who kept to himself. Online gaming was his escape from the chaos of high school life. It was in these virtual worlds that he felt most at home. He spent his evenings in a large, well-established Discord server, where he played games with others and occasionally joined voice chats with friends. It wasn't anything unusual, just another group of people who shared a love for gaming, socializing, and the occasional meme. But little did he know, his sense of normalcy would soon be shattered by a seemingly innocent new friend. It started when a new member joined the server. His name was Alex, and he seemed like just another gamer looking to join in on the fun. Jason didn't think much of it at first. Alex was friendly, engaging, and quick to join in on conversations about games, strategies, and the latest memes. It wasn't long before Jason and Alex started talking more regularly, even exchanging personal stories about their lives, joking about school, family, and shared experiences. But something began to feel off about Alex. It wasn't anything Jason could put his finger on, but a subtle feeling of discomfort began to creep in. Alex seemed to know a little too much about Jason's life. For example, Jason had never shared his personal phone number on the server, but one day, Alex sent him a message saying, "Hey, how's the weather outside today? I know you're in the same town as me." Jason froze. How did Alex know where he lived? He had never mentioned it. He quickly brushed it off as coincidence. But that wasn't the last strange thing to happen. Over the next few days, Alex seemed to become more personal in their conversations. They began asking questions about Jason's family, his school, and his favorite hobbies, things that went beyond gaming. It started to feel like Alex wasn't just interested in their mutual love for gaming, but was digging deeper into Jason's life. Despite the nagging feeling in the back of his mind, Jason continued to respond. He felt a strange pull to this new friend. Someone who was always there to listen, to offer advice, to make him laugh. It was the kind of friendship Jason hadn't really experienced before. He confided in Alex, talking about his personal struggles and the stress of his schoolwork. But slowly, Jason began to notice something darker beneath Alex's friendly exterior. One evening, during a long gaming session, Jason mentioned he had a big exam coming up the next day. Alex immediately replied, "I know. You've been stressing about it for weeks. You always seem so tense whenever we talk about school." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Alex had been paying attention to him more closely than he realized. Too closely. The unsettling behavior didn't stop there. Over time, Alex began to subtly manipulate the conversations, always steering them in a direction that made Jason feel as though he was being watched. "I know you're going to be fine on the exam," Alex would say, almost as if they were in his head. "But I also know you've been feeling overwhelmed lately. You should take a break." Jason never mentioned his stress about school to anyone else in the server. How could Alex know? Then the true terror began. Jason woke up one morning to a message on his phone from an unknown number. It was a picture of his house, taken from a distance. His heart pounded as he recognized the street outside his window. The message read, "I've been keeping an eye on you, Jason. I know where you live. I know when you go to school. I'm closer than you think." Jason felt his blood run cold. It was a message that was impossible to ignore. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. How could Alex know where he lived? They had only met online. This was not a coincidence. He immediately went to check his social media accounts, trying to find any signs of someone hacking into his personal information. But everything seemed secure. There were no traces of his address, no posts about where he lived. He had been careful. So how was Alex getting this information? Jason tried to block Alex, but every time he did, Alex would create a new account to reach out to him. Each message became more threatening, more invasive. "You can't hide from me, Jason. I know your routine. I know what you're doing right now," one message said. It wasn't just about the messages anymore. It was the knowledge that Alex had infiltrated every corner of his online life, and now it felt like he was infiltrating his real life as well. The constant paranoia began to erode Jason's sense of reality. He couldn't focus at school anymore. He couldn't relax at home. Everywhere he went, every corner he turned, it felt like Alex was there, watching, waiting. His once safe space, his gaming world, his Discord server had turned into a prison. And the worst part was that Jason felt utterly alone. He didn't know who to trust. How could he explain this to anyone? Who would believe him? The messages kept coming. Alex knew details about his daily routine, what he ate for lunch, what classes he attended, and even where he liked to hang out after school. It was as though Alex had embedded themselves into every aspect of Jason's life. They seemed to always know what Jason was doing, even when he wasn't online. Then came the final message. "You can't escape me, Jason. You never could. I'm already inside your head." It was chilling. Jason's breath caught in his throat as the walls seemed to close in around him. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Alex wasn't just stalking him. They were controlling him, manipulating his every move. The boundaries between the digital world and his real life had blurred beyond recognition. Jason's world became a living nightmare. The more he tried to escape, the tighter Alex's grip became. And no matter what Jason did, no matter how many accounts he blocked or how many times he changed his phone number, Alex always found a way to contact him. It was as if Jason was trapped in a never-ending cycle, a game with no way out. The horror of the situation wasn't just the stalking, though. It was the realization that Alex was someone he had let into his life, a so-called friend who had never been a friend at all. The lines between friend and foe had become so tangled that Jason no longer knew who Alex truly was. Was this an innocent person who had crossed a line? Or something much more sinister, playing a dangerous game with Jason's mind? The story ends on a chilling note. The haunting message Jason receives leaves him with one final, horrifying thought. If Alex knew everything about him, then who was he? Really? Who was this friend who had been watching him from the beginning? And what was Alex planning next? Lena had always been cautious about what she shared online. She was part of several Discord communities, but she kept most of her personal life under wraps. Her online interactions were limited to gaming, casual chats, and art discussions, and she rarely made her social media public. Despite this, one evening, she received a strange message on Discord that would shatter the illusion of safety she had built for herself. It started with a simple hello from a user she didn't recognize. Their profile was bare. No picture, no status, no information. Just a plain username. Lena hesitated, unsure whether to respond. But curiosity got the better of her, and she typed back, "Hey, who's this?" The response was quick. "I know you, Lena. I know everything about you." The message was vague, almost too unsettling to ignore, but she didn't panic immediately. It was probably someone playing a joke. Or maybe it was one of those bots that sent strange messages to random users. She brushed it off and went about her evening. But the next day, the same user messaged her again. "You've been doing a lot of late-night sketching lately. You draw beautifully." Lena froze. She hadn't posted any new art recently, and the only place she ever shared her sketches was on a private, password-protected server. She hadn't even mentioned her artwork to anyone else on the platform. How did this person know about her drawings? She responded cautiously, "How do you know that?" The reply was unnerving. "I've been watching you, Lena. I see everything you do, every message you send, every click you make." Her heart raced as she read those words. It wasn't just a random person anymore. This was someone who had been monitoring her, someone who had been lurking in the background, gathering information. The realization made her feel exposed, vulnerable, like she was standing in front of a crowd, naked and unprotected. But how had they been doing it? Over the next few days, Lena tried to ignore the strange messages. She muted the conversation, blocked the user, and convinced herself that it was nothing more than a glitch or a prank. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. It was the feeling of being watched, of someone lurking just out of sight, pulling the strings of her online presence without her knowledge. It wasn't long before things escalated. Lena started noticing strange activities in her own server. She would leave messages in one channel, only to return and find them deleted or edited. It wasn't her doing. She had checked the logs. There was no record of anyone making changes. The creeping sense of unease grew, but she couldn't prove anything. Her safe spaces, her personal digital worlds were being violated, and it was impossible to know who was behind it. Then, one night, Lena received an email. It was from an unfamiliar address, with a simple subject line, "I know where you are." Her stomach dropped. The email contained a photograph of her, taken from a distance, in front of the coffee shop she often frequented. The angle was just right, capturing her figure without revealing too much detail. The most chilling part was the timestamp on the photo. It had been taken just hours before. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Someone was watching her in real life. Someone who had been tracking her movements, both online and in the physical world. The photo was a silent threat, a sign that she was no longer safe in the confines of her home. Her heart raced as she opened the email further. The message was brief. "I know where you go, Lena. I know everything about you. You can't hide from me." In a state of panic, Lena checked her phone and social media, looking for any signs that someone had gained access to her accounts. There were no suspicious logins. Everything seemed normal. But the photo, the intimate details, they told a different story. Whoever this was, they knew far more than they should have. They were part of her life now, moving in the shadows, manipulating her world. Her anxiety began to spiral. The fear didn't stop at the photo. The messages kept coming, each one more personal than the last. "You liked that art shop downtown yesterday, didn't you? I was there too. It's so beautiful, isn't it?" Lena began to feel a creeping terror she couldn't escape. Every time she stepped outside, every time she looked around, it felt as though she was being watched. That unseen hand always hovering, always just behind her. Lena didn't know what to do. She had no idea who this person was or what they wanted. The more she tried to shield herself, the more vulnerable she felt. She deleted her accounts, hoping it would stop, but they always found a way back in. New usernames, new email addresses, each one leading her back to the same terrifying experience. No matter what she did, they were always one step ahead. The last straw came when she received a new message one night, in the middle of a particularly stressful week. The message was simple, yet utterly horrifying. "I'm closer than you think. The next time you're out, I'll be right behind you." Lena's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't trust anything anymore. Was she safe at home? Was she safe anywhere? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that her life had become a prison. The walls of her home, once a place of comfort, now felt like a cage. She couldn't leave, not knowing if someone was watching her every step. Then came the final message, "I'm already here." The fear choked Lena, and she dropped her phone in terror. She couldn't breathe. She could feel it now, the weight of an invisible presence, always lurking, always just beyond the edge of her vision. The fear gripped her, and the line between the digital and physical worlds blurred beyond recognition. The story ends with Lena standing in the center of her room, paralyzed with fear, unsure of where her tormentor was hiding or how to escape the grip of the unseen hand. The realization of being trapped in her own life leaves the audience with a haunting question. Who is the person behind the screen, and how far will they go to control her? Zara had always been someone who loved the anonymity of the internet. As a fashion blogger with a modest but loyal following, she had learned the art of curating a perfect online persona. Her photos were always flawless, her outfits impeccable, and she had built an online identity that gave her both a sense of validation and a safe distance from the real world. Zara's followers adored her, leaving kind comments and sharing her posts with enthusiasm. She had cultivated this digital world with care, never imagining that it could turn against her. But one evening, everything changed. It began with a simple notification. A new follower on her Instagram account, something that had happened countless times before. What was strange about this particular follower, however, was the username @phantom_watcher. It wasn't uncommon for users to have mysterious or cryptic names, but this one stood out. Zara clicked on their profile, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. The account had no posts, no pictures, no bio. It was a blank slate, like a void, empty and silent. At first, Zara didn't think much of it. She assumed it was just another random user, someone looking to follow a popular account in hopes of gaining followers in return. But then she started noticing the comments. They weren't like the usual supportive messages she received. Instead, they felt unsettling, almost too specific, like they were following her every move. "You look stunning in this post, Zara. How does the city look from your window tonight?" One comment read. Zara's stomach dropped. She hadn't shared any details about where she was, let alone what her window view looked like. How could they know? The comments continued, each one more chilling than the last. "I see you're wearing your favorite red jacket. You wore that when you visited that little cafe last week, didn't you?" There it was again, the detail that sent a shiver down her spine. Zara had posted a picture in the jacket just a few days ago, but she had never mentioned the cafe or the outing online. The person wasn't just following her posts. They were tracking her movements in real life. Zara blocked the account immediately, hoping it was just a coincidence. But the very next day, @phantom_watcher reappeared, this time under a new name. It was the same pattern, no posts, no profile picture, just a disturbing presence in her comments. They seemed to always be watching, always lurking, as though they were waiting for Zara to post something new. The messages were relentless, growing more intrusive with each passing day. You've been to that bookstore on Fifth Avenue recently. I saw you walking out with a coffee in your hand. Was it a latte? Or did you change it up today? How did they know? Zara was starting to feel a growing sense of paranoia. Was this just a very dedicated fan? Or was something darker at play? As the days passed, the comments started to shift from observations to personal comments. You look so stressed in your last post. Was that meeting with your manager really as bad as you said it was? Zara hadn't even mentioned the meeting on her Instagram. How could they know? Her anxiety began to mount. She tried changing her account settings, making her posts private and limiting who could comment on her photos. But it didn't work. The follower persisted. They were everywhere. Following her on every platform, tracking her posts, sending cryptic messages that seemed to predict her every move. The sense of being watched, of being constantly observed, gnawed at her. It wasn't just a person commenting anymore. It felt like an invasive presence, a shadow that had followed her out of her digital world and into her life. Then, one night, Zara received a private message on Instagram. I can see you right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table, aren't you? You always sit there when you get home. The light from the lamp makes your hair look golden in the dark. Zara froze. Her mind raced. She was alone in her apartment, sitting at the kitchen table, just as the message described. It was a chilling moment of realization. This wasn't a simple stalker online. This person had been watching her, studying her routines, her habits, and her every move. They weren't just following her digitally, they were in her life. Panic took over. Zara immediately locked her doors and pulled the curtains shut. But it did nothing to ease the terror creeping up her spine. She was alone in her apartment, feeling the walls close in on her. The last message from @Phantom_Watcher popped up on her phone, and she hesitated before reading it. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow, Zara. I know where you'll be. Fear wrapped itself around her, tightening with each word. Zara had always felt safe behind the shield of her online identity. But now, that shield felt like nothing more than a thin veil separating her from a dangerous reality. The boundaries between the digital world and her personal life had blurred beyond recognition. She didn't know how this person had found her, or why they were doing this. But she knew one thing for certain. They were not going to stop. For the first time, Zara considered quitting social media altogether. But even that felt impossible. The stalker had already made their way into her life in ways she couldn't escape. Her entire sense of identity had been hijacked, and no matter what she did, they were always one step ahead, lurking in the shadows, watching her every move. Zara's online world, once a source of pride and comfort, had become a trap. She was no longer in control of her own narrative. Every post, every picture, every detail about her life was being used against her. The more she tried to escape, the tighter the grip of @Phantom_Watcher seemed to become. And as the fear began to overwhelm her, the realization sank in. She wasn't just a victim of someone's obsession. She was trapped in a digital nightmare with no way out. The section ends with Zara staring at her phone, paralyzed, knowing that the person behind the screen had already infiltrated her life in ways she couldn't understand. The terror of being stalked not just online, but in the real world, leaves her and the audience questioning how far the boundaries of digital privacy truly extend. Who is this phantom figure, and how much control do they have over her life now? The night was brittle and cold when Claire arrived at the Davidson residence, a small house perched on the edge of town where the forest began. She'd been hired by a neighbor's recommendation, a last-minute job covering for another sitter who'd canceled. The parents were polite but distracted, rushing to leave for a late dinner party. The mother handed her a folded note with emergency numbers. The father gave a quick wave before pulling out of the driveway. The car's headlights swept briefly across the frosted lawn, then vanished into the night. Inside, the house was modest and warm, lit by the faint amber glow of lamps and a crackling fireplace. Claire took off her coat and listened to the soft rhythm of the rain against the windows. The little boy she was watching, Caleb, was already in his pajamas, pale blue with cartoon stars, and sitting cross-legged on the carpet, quietly building towers out of blocks. He was maybe 6 or 7, with dark hair and a quiet, serious face. "Hey, buddy," she said with a smile, kneeling beside him. "Your mom said bedtime's at 8. Okay?" Caleb didn't answer. He just nodded, eyes focused on his tower. "Do you want to watch a movie or something?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "I can't," he whispered. Claire frowned. "Why not?" "Because he doesn't like it when I make noise." She blinked. "Who?" Caleb looked up at her, his expression blank but his eyes wide. "The boy by the window." The words hung in the air like frost. Claire glanced instinctively toward the large bay window that looked out into the dark backyard. The curtains were drawn halfway, rain streaking the glass. The reflection of the room swayed softly in the firelight. Nothing outside but shadows and trees. "Caleb," she said gently. "There's no boy out there." He didn't argue. He just went back to stacking his blocks, humming softly under his breath. The sound was oddly monotone, off-key, like a tune remembered wrong. An hour passed quietly. The rain softened into mist. Claire made some cocoa and set the mug beside him. "Drink this, okay?" she said. Caleb didn't respond. He was staring at the window again, his lips moving silently. "What is it?" Claire asked. He whispered something she couldn't hear. She moved closer. "What did you say?" Caleb turned to her slowly. "He's asking if you can see him now." Claire's breath caught. She turned to the window again. For a split second, she thought she saw movement. A pale shape outside, just beyond the glass. Could have been a trick of the light, a reflection, maybe her own imagination. She forced a laugh. "Okay, funny joke. You got me," she said, though her voice was thinner than she meant it to be. But Caleb wasn't laughing. He was trembling. "You made him mad," he whispered. The lights flickered once, then again. Claire straightened, scanning the room. "It's just the storm," she muttered, though the rain had nearly stopped. She grabbed the remote to turn on the TV. The screen came to life, but instead of a channel it showed static, white noise hissing like wind through dead trees. Then, faintly over the static came a sound. Tap, tap, tap. From the window. 3 slow knocks. Caleb whimpered. "Don't look," he said, burying his face in his hands. "If you look, he'll come inside." Claire's heart hammered. She stood frozen for a moment, every instinct telling her not to turn. But curiosity, stupid, terrified curiosity, made her glance. Through the window, she saw nothing but darkness. Then lightning flashed, brief, white, violent. And in that instant, she saw him. A boy, maybe Caleb's age, standing barefoot in the mud. His clothes were soaked, clinging to his small frame. His skin was ashen, lips blue, eyes wide and empty. Water dripped from his hair as he stared directly at her. When the lightning faded, he was gone. The air in the room shifted, felt colder, heavier. The fire sputtered and went out, leaving only the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Claire knelt beside Caleb, forcing calm into her voice. "Hey, it's okay. Probably just a reflection, all right?" He shook his head violently. "He doesn't like being seen. He wants to come in." Before she could answer, the doorknob rattled. Claire spun around, every muscle locking. Then came the sound again. Tap, 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 this time on the glass of the sliding door that led to the backyard. She took a step closer, clutching the fireplace poker in her hand. The curtain swayed slightly, as though brushed by a hand from outside. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Who's there?" No response. Only the rain returning, heavier now, drumming against the house like fingers. She turned to Caleb. "We're going upstairs. Okay?" He nodded, clinging to her hand. They climbed the stairs quickly, retreating to the master bedroom. Claire locked the door, shutting the curtains tight. The wind howled through the trees outside, carrying faint whispers she couldn't quite make out. She sat with Caleb on the bed, whispering softly, trying to reassure him. He seemed calmer now, his small hand clutching hers tightly. "Does he come here often?" she asked quietly. Caleb nodded. "Every night. He watches." Claire swallowed hard. What does he want? Caleb's voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Someone to play with. Thunder rumbled outside. For a moment all was still. Then came another sound. A faint squeak. The sound of a window sliding open. Claire stood, heart pounding, scanning the room. Every window was locked. She turned to Caleb. He was staring toward the closet door. It was slightly open now. A cold draft blew through, carrying the scent of wet earth. Caleb, she whispered, backing away. Stay behind me. The door creaked wider. Inside the darkness of the closet, something moved. Small, slow, deliberate. Then two pale hands gripped the frame, followed by a head, mud-streaked, eyes black as night. The boy crawled out silently, smiling. Claire screamed, grabbing Caleb and bolting for the hallway. The lights flickered wildly as they ran down the stairs. She slammed the front door open and sprinted into the rain, not daring to look back. They reached the street just as headlights appeared. A car pulling into the driveway. Mrs. Davidson's voice cut through the downpour. Claire? What on earth? Claire shoved Caleb into her arms, shaking. There was someone in the house. A boy. Mrs. Davidson's face drained of color. Her hand trembled as she whispered, A boy. Claire nodded frantically. He was in the closet. Mrs. Davidson's voice cracked. That can't be. Caleb's brother, he died 3 years ago. In that room. The narrator's tone grows quieter, almost a whisper. They say grief leaves doors open that should never be opened, and sometimes the ones who come through never left at all. It was nearly 2 in the morning when Daniel, a young maintenance worker, received a call from the night supervisor. A flickering light had been reported in the basement of St. Gertrude's Hospital, a wing that had been officially closed for renovations years ago. Daniel was used to tedious after-hours requests, but something about that particular assignment unsettled him. The basement wasn't just another part of the building. It was the oldest section, untouched since the 1960s. When the hospital served as both a medical ward and an asylum, the staff avoided it whenever possible. Armed with his flashlight and a ring of keys, Daniel took the service elevator down. As the doors opened, a gust of cold, stagnant air greeted him. The concrete walls were cracked, pipes rusted, and the smell of mildew clung to everything. The light above him buzzed weakly, casting long, uneven shadows across the corridor. He walked slowly, boots echoing on the damp floor. The flickering bulb was easy to find. It hung near an old storage room at the end of the hallway, swaying slightly as if stirred by a draft. Daniel reached up, twisted the fixture, and replaced the bulb. The light steadied, but before he could turn back, a faint sound made him freeze. A whisper. It was distant but distinct, soft, drawn-out words, like someone speaking just beyond the wall. Daniel swept his flashlight across the corridor. Nothing. The beam illuminated peeling paint, an overturned gurney, and a row of old metal cabinets, their doors slightly ajar. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing faintly. The whisper stopped. He shook his head, chuckling nervously. Probably the ventilation, he thought. Or his imagination, anything but someone down there with him. He turned to leave, but the sound came again, clearer this time. "Help me." It was a woman's voice. Faint, trembling, but unmistakably real. Daniel's stomach twisted. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the dripping of water from a pipe and the distant hum of the hospital's generators. He followed the voice deeper into the basement, passing rooms filled with old medical equipment covered in dust. Faded charts hung from rusted hooks. Wheelchairs sat abandoned in corners like forgotten relics. The air grew colder the farther he went. He reached the end of the corridor, where a door marked morgue storage, restricted access, stood slightly open. The faintest light glowed from within. A pale, blue-white hue that didn't belong to any normal bulb. Daniel hesitated. His instincts screamed at him to turn back. But then came the voice again, barely a whisper, closer now. "Please help me." He pushed the door open. The morgue was dimly lit, rows of old refrigeration drawers lining the walls. Many were still labeled with fading tags. The smell of rust and formaldehyde was thick in the air. His flashlight flickered once, then stabilized. "Hello?" he called again. From somewhere behind the drawers came a scraping sound. Slow, rhythmic, like fingernails dragging across metal. Daniel swallowed hard and took a cautious step forward. The sound stopped. Then, faintly, one of the drawers moved, just an inch but enough for him to see. The metal handle twitched, then pulled open a few inches on its own. Daniel's breath hitched. He took a step back, heart hammering. "This isn't funny," he said. "If someone's down here, I'll—" Before he could finish, the drawer slid open completely with a screech of rusted metal. Inside lay a body, or what looked like one. The sheet covering it was yellowed with age, the tag on the toe so faded it was unreadable. Daniel stood frozen, gripping his flashlight so tightly it shook. Then the sheet moved, just a small twitch at first, then more, like something beneath it was breathing. Daniel stumbled backward, tripping over a broken stool. His flashlight clattered to the ground, rolling until its beam hit the far wall. The voice came again, louder now, echoing through the room. "Why did you leave me here?" He scrambled to his feet and bolted for the door. But when he reached the hallway, it was different. The lights were out. The corridor seemed longer, stretched, warped somehow, with shadows that moved even when he stood still. A flicker of movement appeared in the corner of his eye. A figure, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, standing at the far end of the corridor. Her head was bowed, long black hair hanging like wet threads over her face. "Help me," she said again, stepping closer. Her bare feet left dark prints on the floor. Daniel turned and ran. His footsteps echoed wildly through the basement as the sound of dragging followed behind him. He didn't dare look back. He reached the elevator and slammed the button repeatedly. The doors opened slowly, agonizingly slow. He jumped inside, hitting the ground floor button again and again. The doors began to close. Then, just before they shut, a pale hand slid between them. The sensors triggered, forcing the doors back open. Daniel gasped, but the hallway was empty. He hit the button again. The doors closed, sealing him in the small metal box. His reflection in the polished steel panels was pale and trembling. He leaned against the wall, exhaling shakily as the elevator began to rise. Then, from the speaker above him, a faint sound crackled through the static. "Don't leave me again." The lights flickered. The elevator jerked violently, stopping between floors. Daniel shouted and hit the emergency button, but all he got was silence. Then the intercom clicked again, soft breathing, right in his ear. He turned slowly. In the mirrored wall behind him, there was another reflection. A woman standing directly behind his shoulder, her face gray, eyes hollow. She smiled. When the elevator doors finally opened at the ground floor, the security guard found Daniel unconscious, his flashlight broken beside him. He was pale as chalk, pulse faint. When he woke hours later, he refused to speak. The only thing he muttered, over and over, was, "She's still down there." Maya had always loved the anonymity of the internet. As a freelance writer, she spent countless hours working from the comfort of her apartment, her personal space where she could lose herself in her work and avoid the chaos of the outside world. Her online life was a haven, a place where she could interact with her readers, share her latest stories, and engage with her small but loyal fanbase. But one message, from one stranger, would soon shatter that safety and plunge her into a nightmare of paranoia and fear. It all began with a comment on one of her blog posts. The post was about a personal experience she had written about. An evening she spent in a quiet, local cafe, sipping coffee and observing the world around her. It was a mundane experience, but it struck a chord with her readers. The comments had been positive, filled with gratitude for the quiet honesty in her writing. That was, until she noticed one that was different. The comment read, "I remember that night, Maya. The smell of the coffee, the way the light hit the table. You looked beautiful as you sat there, writing." At first, Maya thought it was just someone complimenting her, an overly enthusiastic fan who perhaps had read her post too closely. But then the unease set in. She had never mentioned the exact details in her post. The smell of the coffee, the way the light hit the table. How did this person know those specifics? She brushed it off, thinking it was a coincidence, or perhaps someone who had visited that same cafe at the same time. But the comments kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. I see you're wearing your favorite scarf today. I saw you walking past the park just a few hours ago. You always stop and take a photo of the trees, don't you? The hair on the back of Maya's neck stood up. She had been at the park earlier that day, but she hadn't mentioned it to anyone. She hadn't posted a picture, hadn't shared her plans. How could they know? Maya felt the creeping sense of dread that only deepened as the days passed. The messages continued, becoming more invasive. I noticed how you paused when you crossed the street this morning, like you were unsure if you should keep walking. Were you thinking about turning back? It was the way they spoke to her, with a familiarity that sent chills down her spine. It wasn't just that they knew her routine. It was as though they were watching her in real time, lurking in the background of her life. Maya began to feel as if she were no longer in control of her own story, as if someone else was writing the narrative for her. She tried to ignore it, deleting the comments, blocking the user, but nothing worked. The messages kept coming. I see the way you're looking at your phone right now. You're thinking about what to write next, aren't you? She hadn't posted anything new on her blog in days, so how could this person know what she was thinking? The realization hit her like a punch in the gut. Someone was watching her every move, even the ones she didn't share with the world. Every glance at her phone, every moment of hesitation, was being tracked by someone she couldn't see. Maya tried to convince herself that it was just a creepy online stalker. Someone who had taken her words too literally, someone who had too much time on their hands. But then the unthinkable happened. One evening, as Maya was walking home from a late dinner with a friend, she noticed something strange. She turned a corner, and for a split second, she thought she saw someone standing in the shadows, watching her. She froze, heart racing. It was only a momentary glance, but it felt like an eternity. She turned quickly and kept walking, trying to shake the feeling that she was being followed. When she got home, she checked her phone to find a message from the same user. The comment was simple: I saw you tonight, Maya. I was just a few steps behind you when you turned the corner. You looked beautiful in the streetlight. I almost said hello, but I didn't want to interrupt your thoughts. Maya felt her blood run cold. That was impossible. She hadn't told anyone about her dinner plans or the route she was taking home. And yet, somehow this person had been there, right behind her, watching her every step. The fear consumed her. How had they found her? Had they been following her for days? Or had they been watching her from the very beginning, picking up on every little detail she had shared online? Maya could no longer tell where her real life ended and her digital life began. The boundaries had blurred, and she felt trapped in a nightmare with no escape. Desperate to regain control, she took drastic measures. She deleted her social media accounts, changed her phone number, and moved to a new apartment in a different part of town. She tried to start fresh, hoping that leaving behind her old life would be enough to shake the feeling of being watched. But even after she moved, the comments continued. They were different this time, more subtle. I can see you're getting settled in your new place. I know you're thinking about writing again, just like you always do. So like you to start fresh. The messages were still there, creeping in from the shadows, no matter where Maya went. The ghost in the crowd had found her again, and there was no place she could hide. The section ends with Maya sitting in her new apartment, staring at her phone, paralyzed by the realization that the stalker had never really left. No matter how many times she tried to change, to escape, the digital reflection of her life was always there, lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again.